Hey guys, welcome to the Titanium Vault. I'm your host, RJ Bates III, and today I'm sitting down with Tony Javier. How you doing, man?
Doing good, man. How are you, bud?
I'm excited for today's interview. Like I was talking to you about before, we haven't really had somebody that is done as much TV as you have to generate real estate leads. So I'm excited to dive into that. But before we do that, you have a pretty impressive resume. So give us a brief rundown of your background, how long you've been in real estate, and what all you've done.
Yeah, so back in 2001, I was waiting tables and in college, and I found a late night or saw a late night infomercial, Carlton Sheets, no down payment system. I think a lot of people that have been in the business a while have heard of Carlton Sheets,
Yep.
one of the OGs of education back in the day. So I ended up investing $200 in a course. I think I had less than $1,000 in my account at that point. So I took a leap of faith, bought the course, and it showed you how to buy properties without using any of your own money, which I didn't have money. So I was like, perfect. If I want to buy properties and, do something like this, this could be it. So I got it was actually CDs. They had just converted from tapes to CDs, just to show you how old it is.
Yeah.
And so it was just a binder and CDs. That's all it was. Very simple, basic course. But I got infatuated with it, how you could buy properties with no money down. You could, he talked about the Burr method, which before Burr was really a term.
Right.
And so I ended up burring my first 10 properties. But so I bought that in April of 2001. And September of 2001, so 9/11 basically, I bought my first two properties, no money down. I had my dad co-sign on both of them. He put the down payment on one of them. The other one I was able to buy cheap enough where I could get a loan that paid for the purchase and the renovations on the property. And I was able to get $20,000 back tax-free.
Wow.
So to get $20,000 back tax-free, have another $20,000 in equity on a property that cash flowed while I was in college without much money was absolutely amazing. So that's kind of how the journey of real estate started. First, I'd say about year and a half, about 10 properties, burned them all. And within, 16, 18 months, I was worth several $100,000, from properties. And so at that point, I was able to quit my job waiting tables, dropped out of college with 9 hours left to graduate, and just jumped full time into real estate.
I love it. I've got a pretty specific question about that because you brought up 9/11. I mean, I was in high school when 9/11 happened, and it was a scary time. I mean, it was like we didn't really know what was going to happen in the world. Were we going to war? Like, I was approaching being 18 years old. It was like, hey, is there going to be a draft? Am I going to have to go be, going to Afghanistan or Iraq? Was there ever a concern like that you had where you were like, hey, I'm buying these houses in like this super unknown times? Was that a concern of yours?
Yeah, I mean, I can't really remember, but I do kind of remember like having that same thought. I remember I was in a class, and I was on the class computers. They had like a room with computers, and I
Right.
saw like a plane runs into the World Trade Center. Didn't think anything of it. I'm like, it's a small plane or accident. So I go to class, come back out an hour and a half later, and there's a TV in the hallway, like in the main area, and
Yeah.
everyone just has their eyes glued to it. I remember thinking the same thing. We're getting attacked. Two planes at the World Trade Center. One
Right.
was going for the Pentagon, and I'm like, oh man, am I going to get drafted? Or I mean, same thing that you just said. And I remember kind of being scared a little bit, like, do I want to kind of get into this? But obviously something kind of pushed me through to close on those properties. It
You were
wasn't
like,
one of
hey, I invested $200. That's like 20% of my total net worth. I'm all in,
exactly. I'm
baby.
all in, man. I'm all in.
I love it. Do you still own any of those properties?
Interesting enough, I just sold those two properties probably 2 years ago. Um, or excuse me, the first two properties. Yeah, the first two properties 2 years ago. The other ones I'd have to look. I think I may still own a few of those. I unloaded a bunch of properties back in 17 and 19, which obviously everybody says this, but I wish I would have kept them because
Right.
those appreciated another $1 million plus. But yeah, I still, use the same methods to these day, buying properties with no money down, burying them, having some cash flow, having some equity, some tax savings with accelerated depreciation. And then I keep them for a little while, and then I'll sell them in 1031 exchange. So
I love
I'm
it.
still doing the same method to today.
So, looking over your resume, you've done over 1,000 deals over these 20 plus years. Have they all been burrs? Were there flips, wholesale? What was kind of the blend there?
Yeah, great question. I would say probably close to 200 were burrs. I still own over 100 properties now. Sold some of those over the years, but I'd say about over 80% of those we ended up selling at close on everything. The reason I close on everything, a lot of people like to wholesale, which is great. I mean, I'm not saying that that's not great. What I like about closing on them is that I'm in control. I don't have to push out into it to an email, push out an
Right.
email blast. I don't have a 3 to 4 week or 5 or 6 week window to sell the property. We take our time, and then we either clean it up and put it back on the market to sell as a wholesale, which is a very small percentage of what we do. But a lot of them we fix up, and then we decide after we fix them up, do we sell them or do we keep them as rental properties? And I've got a whole spreadsheet that my team will fill everything in, outline it, send it over to me, and then we'll make a decision on whether we flip that property or whether we keep it in our portfolio.
See, what I love about that is though you have a system and a process, right? There's a process in which what you're doing with your properties. For us, we're a wholesaler. I openly talk about mistakes that I made in 2018, 2019. And that's where we got away from the process of what we do. It wasn't wholesaling anymore. We took a lot down. And we didn't have a process built out around what we were going to do with these rentals and these flips that we were taking down. It was just, hey, we're a really good wholesaler. So, of course, we're going to be a great flipper and a landlord too. And that's not the case. So I love the fact that you're like, hey, we're not even going to pretend to try to be a wholesaler. We're going to take everything down. We're going to take our time because you're right. There is a lot of pressure, especially for example, we just sent out 6 contracts to a seller today where he's facing foreclosure in the next 2 weeks. That is a lot of pressure in order for
Mhm.
us to get that taken care of, or otherwise he's going to lose those properties. So I appreciate you bringing that up because I think that's something that we don't openly talk enough about as real estate investors. So, fast forward, how does TV become a part of Tony's world here? I mean, where did that come from?
Great question. So I've always been a proponent of trying things. So back in 2002 or 2003, I filed an LLC, and I had someone call me. Actually, you know who it is, Leon Barnes.
Yeah.
So I got Leon into the business. He called me, cold called me, and said, "Hey, I do phone book advertising for people." And so I ended up. He tells the story. I actually ghosted him after I set an appointment briefly, but he kept following up with me, and so I was like, "All right, I'll meet with you." I didn't have much money, and so he ended up selling me like a $60 phone book ad, just a little ad to start with, and I actually make good money on it. I think I at least 10, if not 20 times my money. It might have been 30 times my money because it was, it wasn't very expensive. And then I kept increasing over the years. And so fast forward to 2012. Yep, 2012. I ended up meeting a guy at a networking event, kind of a whole by chance thing. I wasn't supposed to go to it. And there's a whole story behind that too. But anyway, so we become friends. He invites me to a poker game. And so I go down into this guy's basement, and I see these two guys, and I'm like, I recognize those guys. Those guys are on TV. They have TV commercials. And so I purposely sat next to one of the guys. I'm an introvert by nature, but I'm like, I'm kind of like have this little celebrity status thing in my head. Like, I want to sit next to this guy that's on
Right.
TV. So I was like, hey man, I see you on TV a lot. How are your commercials doing for you? And he's like, dude, and his eyes just lit up. He's like, we do millions of dollars a year in business, and all we do is TV commercials. And then he starts going into like, people call us, the conversations are easy. Other people tell people about us because we're on TV. So there's like free marketing right there from the people that see us. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And I wasn't thinking anything of it. And he goes, maybe that would be good for your business. And I'm like, I don't know. And I was like, he's like, I'll tell you what, here's my media guy, Drew. Why don't you call him? So I called Drew Monday morning, And, I'm all about trying things. So I'm like, Drew, tell me about TV. It's like, do you think this would be good for my business? He goes, well, I'll tell you what, let me go back to the stations or go to the stations and I'll come back to you and I'll tell you like what I think you need to spend. And he's like, I've got some, and then he calls me back a week later. He's like, I've got some good news for you. Your demographic is lower income and older. And he said, I went to those shows that I know people are watching and they're actually pretty inexpensive. And he's like, for $3,000, I can get you, I can't remember what the number was. It was like 300 or 500 commercials a month. It was a lot. And so I'm like, all right, let's do it. Let's roll. So I spent $3,000 my first month, made 35,000 my first month, and the rest is history. I mean, it's been super consistent over the last 11 years. And it's crazy because I didn't realize that I had kind of a formula that people wanted and needed. And that was over many years, I've dialed in stations. We've tried different shows. We've done a lot of different tweaking. I've tested 12 different scripts on my TV commercials. 8 have worked really well. And so I had this formula that, people were wanting. People were like, why don't you teach people and show people what you're doing? So a few years ago, I went back to Drew, my media guy, and I said, we've got something really good here and people keep asking for it. If I were to show people what I'm doing and, hold their hand through the process, would you negotiate the rates with the station, do the production, basically do everything you did for me? And he's like, absolutely. He's like, I've been doing this for 20 plus years all over the country. We can do it for anybody in any industry, really. But he's like, you've got something dialed in. So yeah, if you can find your same avatar, let's do it. So I called 10 people that I knew that could probably afford it. 8 people said yes. And I think we still have, and that was 3 years ago. I think we still have 6 or 7 of those still running with us today. Some of them, Dean Rogers, um, Andrew Lucas. Yeah. And the great thing is that when I launched this for other people, I was thinking, did I get a little bit lucky? Because I knew TV worked, but I didn't know, like, is it usually 3 months, 6 months, 12 months before someone really starts getting traction? And so when we started launching other people, they started seeing the same results, like literally week or even day one, they started getting phone calls and many of them did multiple deals their first month. So I'm like, man, this is crazy. So from then I'm like, all right, let's do this. So we launched it to the public and we have to this day 110 real estate investors running TV with us that are getting very similar results. So it's just been crazy how something like that turns into something where we just help a lot of people really grow and scale their businesses.
You just dropped like titanium vault guest like alumni list there. Dean Rogers, Leon G. Barnes, who obviously Leon's my buddy from Pardon the Disruption.
Yep.
Love that guy. So I've got some specific questions here about TV because I'm genuinely curious. Just from the nature in which you're talking about TV, it's like, hey, we're going to send this out to the world, and then we're going to wait on the calls or submissions to our websites, right? It's very similar in nature to direct mail campaigns. And I almost feel like the cost would be similar to direct mail campaigns. Do you think that is a fair assessment there?
Absolutely not. In fact, it's dramatically different. Um, Guess which way it goes. More expensive or less expensive?
Well, I'm guessing that TV is going to be less expensive, but I guess what I'm saying is like up front, you're going to spend, like, use your example there. You spend $3,000 and then you're waiting on the responses back, right?
Right.
In nature, that's similar to what direct mail is. That's what I'm referring to is, hey, you're dropping this much money and then you're waiting on those returns back.
Right,
So
100%. Sorry, I misunderstood the question. What I was thinking was how expensive it is to do TV compared to direct mail, and what I compare it to is what is our cost per reach? So
okay,
there's something called CPM, which is basically cost per thousand in TV terms, and you can use it for other marketing mediums as well. So if you do the math, if you send out 1,000 direct mail pieces, if you're doing postcards, it's about 50 cents, give or take, a little more, a little less sometimes. So call it $500 to hit 1,000 people. For TV commercials, for that same 1,000 people, you're only paying $5 to $10 per thousand. So it's 50 to 100 times less expensive to hit the same amount of people. And
Right.
some people may say, well, it's not quite as targeted. Yeah, that's true. But I mean, you're probably hitting those people that are on list. But the beautiful thing is you're also hitting people that aren't on those lists that are either looking to sell or getting ready to sell or getting ready to be on lists. So you're actually
Yep.
hitting them before they get on those lists. So it's dramatically less expensive when you look at it that way. And it's just the reach you get from TV is just unlike anything else. And then on top of that, there's the credibility you get. Just like when I went to that poker game, if I saw those two guys and they hadn't been on TV, I'd be like, "You're just a Joe Schmo."
Right.
But them being on TV, it's like I wanted to go sit next to them. I wanted to talk to them.
Yep.
It's just one of those things that happens. So it happens with sellers; they trust you more. It happens with buyers if you're dealing with buyers, with contractors, with this is a big one. Private money lenders. I've actually had a private money lender walk into my office and say, "I see you guys on TV. I've been wanting to invest in real estate, but I don't really want to buy houses." Oh, perfect. And so we're like, we have a private money program. You can invest in our deals. You don't have to swing hammers, blah, blah, blah. And within 6 months, it might have been closer to 12 months, he had over $1 million invested with us. And anytime I talk to someone in Wichita, Kansas, where my TV commercials are running, and they're like, "Hey, John told me about you. He's investing with you. I want to learn about what you're doing. I've seen you on TV for years." It's just, you can tell the way they talk to me. It's like they already trust me and the credibility's there because of TV. Um, and then
So
I
I
could
want
go on
to
and on. There's probably 20 to 30 benefits that I could go through that TV offers.
so I want to talk to you about what you said, where because that's where I was going to go with it, is that direct mail is super targeted, or when you pull a list, you're super targeted. But I teach this all the time because one of our channels is cold calling through lists, right? I'm not big on direct mail myself just because I find it to be cost prohibitive, and it has some of the worst returns out there.
Hmm.
And I say it all the time where, hey, they might show up as pre foreclosure or tax default or vacant property, but that very rarely is the motivating reason as to why they want to sell. There's a story as to why they're in pre foreclosure, and that's the real motivation. So, to
Yeah.
your point, we're going to be hitting them with our television commercial prior to them going into pre foreclosure because of that real story as to why they're going into pre foreclosure. So, cold calling, texting, direct mail, you're late to the game. And you're right. You don't get any credibility by sending a text or cold calling with a virtual assistant or a piece of postcard. Like in reality, you're just getting yelled at more than you are actually talking to a motivated seller. So let's talk about the conversations that you're having with sellers. What does that look like in comparison to a cold call or these other forms of marketing? How pleasant is it? Because it feels like they're going to be coming to you saying, "Hey, thank you so much. I'm super interested in selling my house." Is that kind of how it goes in comparison to other forms of marketing?
Well, it's funny. I've only had a couple of our clients send me like recordings of people that called and said, "Hey, get off my TV. What are you doing, you a-hole?" And, just all kind of stuff. It's very rare, right?
Right,
Like obviously with texting and cold calling, like every day, right? Every
right,
day you're getting that. So the great thing about TV is it provides high quality leads that aren't tire kickers. Because if someone is calling you, number one, they know or feel like you're legit business. So they're not just going to call you and waste your time, most likely. Um, the other thing is that if they are taking their time and stepping away from the TV to either go on your website or to call, they're probably a pretty motivated seller. They're actually wanting to sell a house. They're not just getting hit with a Facebook ad or a random text or a call where they're just like, "Yeah, give me an offer and I'll see if I want to sell," kind of thing, right? And so with you can tell me what your numbers are, what you're seeing, but cold calling and texting, from what I've heard, is between 50 leads to 100 leads to get a deal.
yep,
Whereas with TV, our numbers are about one out of every 10 leads becomes a contract. And then we have some clients that are even 1 in 5. I would say 1 in 10 to 20 is probably a good range for TV. But yeah, the conversations are totally different. They are actually not trying to sell you, but they're actually calling you to get them to do business with you instead of the other way around, instead of you trying to reach out to them.
Right.
So it's a totally different conversation.
And those numbers that you gave on cold calling and texting, pretty accurate there. Listen, everyone's going to have a different version of what they consider as a lead and not a lead.
Mm-hmm.
One of my questions I have about this is how often are people responding to a TV commercial wanting to sell their house for full market value? How are we getting the truly motivated discounted properties from these commercials?
That's a great question. I'd have to look. I'd have to dive into the leads and ask my team and like pull that stat. I haven't really looked at that, but I know when I was doing acquisitions back in 2015, before I moved to San Diego from Wichita, that most people called because they are in distress. I mean, our commercial is we're buying your property as is. You don't have to pay any fees, any commissions. You don't have to do any repairs. That kind of thing. So our commercial shouts
Right.
motivated seller, most likely a house that's in distress. I would guess that probably 1 out of every 10, maybe 2 out of every 10 leads, maybe like a retail lead where you could take it. And actually, a lot of our clients that are real estate agents are actually making money just on that, taking the leads that they can't buy that are actually in pretty good shape and making those listings. And even for us, we refer those listings out. We make a little bit of money each year on referring them out to other agents. So yeah, I'd say probably 1 to 2 out of every 10 is actually someone that could sell on the open market that's in good condition and probably get way more than what we can give them.
So my buddy, also part of the disruption, panelist, Eric Brewer, he's big on TV.
He's a
And
client of ours as well.
yeah. And so I want to use him as an example to those that might be like, okay, yeah, this sounds great, but I'm a high introvert. I won't even go live on Facebook. There's no way in the world I'm going to get in front of a camera crew, lights, and make a commercial. Eric utilizes his mom for his TV commercials, correct? And that's been like a huge hit for him, utilizing his mom. So is there a certain level of like creativity that your clients have on how these commercials are like developed?
Great question. So people use us because they know we have the formula, right? We know that if you do everything that we say, the likelihood of your commercials working is very high, right? We have clients that come to us and are like, well, I want to shoot it in my backyard, or I want to shoot it here, or I've got a video guy that can do a bunch of amazing things. And it's like, our commercials are very simple. They're to the point. They're not
Right.
super sexy, but we know they work, right? So we talk through it. Like if someone has a mom they want to put in it, I've got a client that him and his mom are in it, and it's doing really well in 2 markets. He's running in 2 markets with us. We have people that have kids that want their kids in the commercial. And then we tested that over a year ago and that did well. So now we have a script and we have a model for putting families in a commercial. We've got husband and wife. We've got, 2 guys that are partners. There's a lot of different variations to it. The thing that needs to be the same as the station and Soj we put you on. The scripts are very similar. The format of the commercial is very similar. So we will be a little bit creative with adding different layers to it. So back to your point, if someone doesn't want to be on the commercial, we can do many things. First of all, I've had some people that are real introverts that are really terrible on camera that we've had come in the studio and shoot, and we've been able to edit it and make it look good, right? We do enough takes that we can find something to work with. Two is I've done commercials for people, so I'm probably in 10 markets throughout the U.S. right now with my face on the commercial. But if someone says I want an older white lady or something, whatever it is that they feel like is going to produce well in their market, then we can find talent to do that commercial. But I will say that if you are spending the money to be on TV and building that credibility, that you should be in the commercial because you're building your personal brand. If I go into Wichita, Kansas right now, I see people look at me and I can tell that they're like, I recognize that guy from somewhere, or they know who I am, or a lot of people come up to me like, oh, you're the real estate guy, or you're the TV guy, right? That is priceless, right?
Right.
Because if I go out and I go do business in Wichita and they say, I know who you are, I've seen you on TV, the credibility is already there and it helps me negotiate. It helps me to do business with them. They don't have to vet me as much and that kind of thing. And especially if your team or you are going into houses That right there is like they treat you like a celebrity. Oh, Tony, I didn't realize that you were
Right.
coming. You know, it's like,
I mean, that's what I was gonna say. I mean, that's part of what you're paying for is that credibility as well, right? When hey, the lead comes in, they, your team takes the answer. If they see you come to the house, I mean, it's like you're the guy that was on TV. You're the woman that was on TV. That instant, like, I want to do business with you, just like you felt in that poker room. So yeah, I think people need to get over that. And it's funny, I'm the one saying this. First 2-3 years of the podcast, there was no video, there was no YouTube channel because I was afraid of cameras and lights.
yeah.
And now I've actually been on TV, and let me tell you, it's not that bad. Okay,
Mhm.
these are professionals. I mean, they work with you, and they're like, "Hey, just do it again, do it again. Stop reading the script. Just be you," and eventually it comes out. So I love that. Let's talk about like the expense here in comparison to other. I know back when you got started, it was $3,000, and that got you like 500 commercials. What is it looking like now? And does the market depend on how much it costs?
Yeah, it's totally market dependent. We have people spending, 5 grand a month, which most markets would also recommend spending less than that. I'm a pretty small market, and I was able to start on the lower end. But when you do the math on it, adding a couple $1,000s to your budget to be able to get an extra several deals a year, most likely, is worth the extra money. But there are markets where we have clients spending 100 grand a month, and those are in bigger markets that they're on the high end of the ad spend. I mean,
Right,
that's them starting at 10 grand and going to 100 eventually because they're, just it worked and they continue to add to it. I would say most markets throughout the US, I'd say 90% of the markets will be somewhere between 5 to 10 grand a month. Which if you look at a direct mail drop, I mean, you're easily spending 5 to 10 on a decent direct mail drop.
right,
Um, and the other thing about it is that there's not a lot to manage because when we set it up right. When started my commercial back in 2012, we actually didn't change it for over 12 months. It produced, it did well. The only reason that I did a new commercial is I wanted to test something and see if anything did better. Most of our commercials, when we do them, they do well and they run for 12 to 18 months and we don't touch them. Whereas most other marketing mediums, you have to manage it every month, if not every week, or with texting and cold calling every day for the most part. So it's kind of a set it and forget it mentality. So, it's not super cheap. It's not something that a new investor that, only wants to spend 1,000 a month could do. But if someone is doing other forms of marketing, especially at scale, it's an absolute no brainer. So if someone's doing direct mail, PPC, and even cold calling can help because people, when they warm up the conversation and they realize someone is actually looking to sell and not just a tire kicker, they will mention their TV commercials. We told our clients to start doing that, and it softens up the conversation even more. Oh, you're the guys on TV, right?
yep,
But TV kind of ties everything together where if you're doing direct mail, if you're doing PPC, all of those things are helped by TV because of the credibility. We get, I would say, anywhere from 1 to 3 deals a year where someone will get our direct mail, to get our postcard and say, we called you and only you because we noticed you're on TV and we know who you are, where we don't know who these other guys are.
yep,
Right. And we've actually had many people sell to us for a lower amount because they know we're credible, and they'll say, "Well, we have these other guys. They offered 5,000 more, 10,000 more, whatever the number is. We've seen you on TV throughout the years. We're going to take your offer because we feel like you're going to close. We're not sure about these other guys, right?"
yep.
So again, I could go on and on about the benefits of TV, but
But I
it just
mean,
it just layers onto each other.
let's just utilize cold calling as an example here. I mean, if you say you have 5 virtual assistants cold calling for you, you're probably spending somewhere between $1,000 to $1,200 a week just in their labor. This is not including the dialer. This is not including the list. This is not including the skip tracing. I mean, very quickly with a small cold calling force of 5 people, you're eclipsing the cost of TV right there. And there's a lot of management that has to go into that. So, from a management perspective of what this looks like, I say, okay, Tony, here's 10 grand a month. So I just I can just give you 120 grand. What does that look like from my perspective? Is there an extra expense where I have to pay for the production of the commercial, or is that included in that? And how often am I having to come out and record commercials from with you?
Yeah, it's a great question. So first of all, we make it super easy. So we would negotiate with the stations, put the scripts together, set you up in your market to shoot the commercials, so you don't have to come to us. We have several clients in Orange County, just north of me, that virtually invest in other markets. So I just offer them to drive an hour and a half down to come shoot with me. Um, so we make that super easy. There are some other costs associated that if someone wants to book a call, we can talk about that. And then we mentioned the ad spend of 5 to 10 grand in any given market. That they'll need to invest. And so if someone like I mentioned with my commercials, when I started, I was able to get several hundred commercials in my first month. So when someone comes to us and says, "What would the low amount of ad spend get us?" So if in someone's market we look at it and we say you wouldn't want to spend less than 7,000, chances are that's going to get somewhere between 500 and 800 commercials a month. Which it's kind of interesting because I met a guy last week in Vegas at an event. He's like, "Oh, I'm already doing TV," and I was like, oh, "Okay, cool." And then he just texted me a little bit ago and he sent me his schedule. He's getting 30 commercials a month for is either $3,000 or $4,000. And I just kind of laughed at it because he is getting absolutely hosed. So what he did was he called the station directly and said, I want to spend X amount of dollars. So they just gave him the most expensive package that isn't even the right audience. He's on like morning news channels. So
Jeez.
it's really expensive. It's not super dialed in. And so we've got a call later today, and I looked at his market, and we already have data on it. And for that same $3,000, we can get him like 600 commercials a month. And it
That's
and a lot of it
that
has to
is
do
a
with. I mean, we're good at.
monster difference.
Oh, it's an amazing difference. Imagine only being seen one time a day compared to 20 times a day,
Right.
right? And so, yeah, because we've had several people come just like this guy that are like, we're doing, and he's actually doing okay with it. He's like, I'm doing okay. It's not doing great, but it's like, man, we can get you 20 times more commercials. So we've had many people come to us, even if they're doing TV already. And we've been able to dial in. So either their commercials not very dialed in. I mean, you have to have an easy to remember phone number. You have to have an easy to remember website. You have to be on the right shows and stations. That your call to action has to be right. I mean, there's so many different elements to TV that someone that's really smart could do it themselves, but we also have some really smart people that are not able to do it themselves. I mean, Ron LeGrand, for instance, he's a super smart guy who ran TV commercials for a long time for his info products. And he's hiring us to do his commercials because he knows that it's a different way to do commercials and he doesn't want to mess with it. And he wants us
Right.
to dial it in. So, and that's the great thing about TV is there's not a lot of competition. So if you can get on TV and figure it out, um, the uh, the barrier of entry is very high, right?
Right.
Texting and cold calling, you can listen to a podcast. Someone could say, go to Batch, buy this list, hire this VA company, and within a week to 2 weeks, you could be up and running with cold calling and texting. Whereas TV, there's so many more elements to it that not many people do it.
So, specific question for me and for my audience, because a lot of my audience is going to be, people that have attended Crucibles, our education program, things like that. We teach nationwide virtual wholesaling. So, when I say nationwide, I mean we are all 50 states and we don't care where the lead is coming in. So, if I go to you and I say, Tony, I want to do TV, where are you going to lead me to doing TV? Because it sounds like it's going to be market specific. So how would we figure that out together on where we could actually run commercials?
Yeah, great question. So we look at your market first because you're there, right?
Right.
That would be the obvious one. If someone's like, it's too expensive in my market or I don't do any business in my market, then we go look at the other markets. What markets are you doing business in? Where do you have a team? Where are your profit margins higher? We just dive into that. And if someone's like, well, I do PPC all over the country and I don't know where I'm going to get my deals, then we go on and we'll look at a map and I'll show you different areas where we've either had success or where I know for a low ad spend that you can get a high return. For instance, there's a lot of different markets in the Southeast that are small markets. And when I say small markets, they're usually between 500,000 to a million people for the metro and the surrounding areas.
Right.
I consider that still kind of a small, maybe a medium sized market where you could spend between 5 and 7 grand a month. And we have a lot of clients that are doing that and getting anywhere from a 10 to 20 times return. Because really, you only have to do a couple deals, a couple decent deals,
Right.
25 to $30,000 deals to get that 10x return. And that's one of the reasons I call it 10x TV is we get in front of 10 times more people, 10 times faster with 10 times more credibility. But we also have a lot of clients that are doing 10 times return on their money, which we've done in some years in the past as well. So yeah,
Well,
that's how we would go through the whole process of figuring out which market to dive
a good
into.
example of that would be me, for an example. I'm just going to make an assumption here that running a commercial in Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas is going to be a lot more costly. I mean, you're talking about like, I think the fourth and the 12th largest metro city in the United States. Okay, that's probably going to cost a lot more than if I said, hey, let's go run something in Chattanooga, Tennessee, or Birmingham, Alabama, where we probably do less deals there, but when we do get deals there, they're instantly, sold and profitable for us. So that would be something, intriguing for a virtual wholesaler like myself. Okay, another question I've got. We talked about Michael McDonald, and when I was doing research on Michael McDonald for his podcast on the Titanium Vault, of course, I went to his website and saw, launch home buyers and saw all this stuff. Now, fast forward, I'm sitting down with the kiddos. We're watching WWE Monday Night Raw on YouTube TV. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, there's Michael McDonald. Hey, do you need to sell your house? Go to Launch Home Buyers. These guys' whole little TV commercial. So obviously, that was a retargeting ad. Was that through your efforts, or is that another marketing? Because to me, it was on TV. So was that a part of your ads, or is that something else that he was doing?
That's a great question. I would imagine it has to be through us because he's running TV through us, and there's nobody else that's servicing him.
Right.
I know that on YouTube TV we run it on certain stations and shows, but I think my media team probably negotiates something like that where we get extra ads that retarget on certain devices.
That was really cool to see, because it was clear that the reason why it was there is because it was a retargeting ad. And so, to your point, it was kind of refreshing my memory, rebuilding that credibility. There he is, over and over and over again. I highly doubt, well, maybe, I don't know. I was going to say, I highly doubt that you're specifically targeting Monday Night Raw, WWE, but maybe that is a good demographic. I don't know. That's interesting. So, where do you see the future of TV going as we move more into this world where it's streaming services like Netflix and YouTube TV? Like, I just converted over. I've had Direct TV for years because it was the only way you could get NFL Sunday Ticket. I'm a big football guy. Now all of a sudden, hey, this season can't get it on Direct TV. You
YouTube
got to get
TV.
it through YouTube TV. So where
Yeah.
do you see the future of TV going?
Well, here's the interesting thing. So YouTube TV just spent, millions or hundreds of whatever the number is to get YouTube TV, right? So if they didn't believe that TV was going to be around for a long time, they wouldn't have invested that money.
Right.
Because YouTube TV, even though it's YouTube, is still regular TV and cable TV,
Yep.
right? And so if you look at the statistics with people in the US that watch TV, it's astounding. I think it's like 40% of the US still watches 3 hours of TV or more per day. 40%. Is that down from 5 to 10 years ago? Yeah, probably a little bit down. But here's the great thing is our demographic, which is lower income, uh, older, they grew up with TV, traditional TV. They don't want to, one, spend money on streaming. Small portion of them may want to, and they watch their same old shows that are on the shows and stations that we still buy, right? So Could it change 20 years from now to be dramatically different? Probably. Is it going to change in 5 years? Probably not, because it's been dramatically different in the last 5 years, and TV viewership hasn't gone down that much. And even if it does, we'll shift. But right now, so the guy that I told you that I met last week in Vegas, he's like, yeah, I'm on, some different stations, and then they sold me streaming and all this stuff. And I'm like, I'm kind of hitting my head against the wall going, no, don't do that, because one, it's not very targeted. So even if they say we're going to target your demographic of 50 and older, well, what if, or let's say 40 and older. So let's say your kids are watching it. It's not targeting you. They're
Right.
watching a show that may not even be something that you watch. So for us, it's we want to target the shows that we know older people are watching and potentially lower income, right? Also, there's no way to track it with TV. There's an old system where we get a report for our clients every single month that verifies third party that commercial ran on that show and that station at this time, and third party verified. Whereas with streaming, they can tell you they can get 10,000 impressions, but you have no way to track it. It's all about trust, and they're spreading it all over the place,
Right.
right? We've had many people outside of us say, oh, I don't want to try TV. I'm going to try streaming. And I advise them against it. And they've come back to us many months later and being like, we didn't get one call from that. So could it change later where TV kind of develops more into streaming? Yeah, we may just have to figure that out. But I don't see that happening for at least 5 to 10 years, and there's still plenty of time to run commercials until then.
Well, man, you have completely opened my mind to this whole world, because you're right. When you think about starting a wholesaling business or, any sort of real estate business and marketing, it's all about texting, cold calling, direct mail. And yeah, over the past couple of years, now there's the pay per lead models, which we're big in with PPC and YouTube
Mhm.
ads and stuff like that. But this is a whole nother world, and nothing compares to an inbound lead where they're saying, I want to sell to you. How much will you give me for my house? I love that. How can people find out more about 10X TV and learn more about you?
Yeah, so we do semi-market exclusivity, which means we only have so many spots per market. So if someone wants to check to see if their market's available and we can price it out and all that good stuff, you can go to remtv.com. Again, remtv.com stands for Real Estate Masters TV. Yep, go there. Just fill out some information. You can book a call with us, and we can talk you through it. And one of the things that people ask me typically a lot of the time in podcasts and conversations, because I've been in the business long, is what would you do differently starting out 22 years ago? And I say two things. One is join a mastermind group or community, or hire a coach, something where you can get support and learn from other people's mistakes, which I didn't do for, I think CG was my first attempt at it in 2015, of getting in a room with really smart people. And then the second thing is, I wish I would have started TV sooner. TV is not for everybody. It's not for we've had some newer investors that have done TV with us, and the only reason we did that is because they either sold a company, or they had a lot of sales experience, or ran a company really high level, and we figured that they could figure it out. But typically it's going to be for investor doing at least 1 to 2 deals a month. If you're doing 4 to 5 deals a month, it's an absolute no-brainer to give it a
Right.
shot. So yeah, I mean, those are the two things that I would say I would do differently starting out. So I would say at the very least, book a call. We'll kind of talk about what your market looks like. If it's not the right timing for either of us, either we don't think it's a good fit for you, or a good fit for us, we can table that. But as you can see, TV's not as expensive as you would think, and it's not just for big brands, which is a lot of a big misnomer with the general public.
Well, I appreciate you coming on here and dropping as much knowledge. I try to get as specific as I could about a topic that I currently am not using. I'm going to look into your program. I'm probably going to have you price out a couple of markets for me, just to see what that would look like. So I love the knowledge that you dropped. And just going back to the credibility and the social proof, not on TV, but by putting yourself on video. I will give a specific KPI that I have. I share every day 2 reels on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and on YouTube Shorts of me talking to sellers. Legitimately me talking to another seller buying their property, okay? During my previous 50-day challenge, I got 14 properties under contract from a seller reaching out to me on Instagram or TikTok saying, I saw you buy someone else's house on Instagram and TikTok. How much would you give me for my house?
Nice.
Social credibility is so important. And to your point, 40% of Americans are watching 3 hours of TV a day. That's the power in that alone. We're not even talking about the highly motivated person that needs to call you and wants to call you right there. This is about just the credibility side of things. I think it's super powerful. And like you said, if you're doing 4 to 5 deals a month, no brainer. Reach out to Tony. The link will be in the show notes. Just click down below. You can click on that, schedule a call with Tony. Tony, I appreciate you coming on here, man, and taking the time to drop knowledge about TV.
Awesome, man. Good to be on the King of Closers podcast, man.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Hey, if you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to go give Tony a follow, check him out, and then also give us a 5-star review. We will see you next week. Thank you, guys.